Good afternoon, Emma Pace. Thanks for being on my podcast today. I feel like I've got a semi-celebrity here. I see that you've been on CBC radio and a few things like that. So just for the viewers and listeners, just wondering if you could tell us a bit about yourself, how long you've been in real estate, and what your main focus is.
Yeah, for sure. So I've been in real estate for 7 years now. I work for a brokerage called Zoocasa, which is a tech-focused brokerage. That's like our headquarters are downtown, but we participate in real estate throughout Southwestern Ontario. And so I started there as a very green agent, and over the 7 years have learned a lot. And now I run my own team, which we've recently rebranded to Monstera. And so I primarily focus myself with my own internal business on helping millennials essentially upsize from their first home to their forever home. And so earlier in my career, I focused very heavily on selling condos. And now a lot of those people have done really well as a result of the market and have a ton of equity. And now what we're looking at is how do we trade them up to their forever home? And then the other members of my team, the other agents on my team, primarily deal with first-time buyers downtown Toronto.
Well, excellent. Yeah, very, very impressive. 7 years and making those great strides. So that's fantastic. Congrats on that.
Thanks.
So a lot of things been going on in the market. As you've said, prices have gone up quite a bit. I own a couple of investment condos myself in Toronto, and we've had rising prices. The government's trying to do things to help make things more affordable for people. And then just, yesterday we had that big 0.5% increase from the Bank of Canada, which the last time was in 2000 that they raised it that much. So based on today's environment, what would you say is the biggest opportunity for people at this time?
Yeah, so I think a lot of real estate is a mental game, right? Mm-hmm. And so, of course, the rate hikes and the uncertainty in the market and the media, the headlines and all that kind of stuff, they really do grasp the masses to say, okay, cool, like the market is shifting, things are obviously slowing down, but I think it comes back to like Warren Buffett's classic saying of be fearful when others are greedy and be greedy when others are fearful. And I think right now there's a lot of fear in the marketplace. And so I think the actual opportunity is for those who want to make long-term plays in real estate. So we're in a rising interest rate environment, but I don't think that the desire for home ownership changes because of that, right? And so I think we still inherently have a supply and demand issue, and I think people still have the desire to own real estate, but the uncertainty and is the market going to crash, yes or no question is out there and put to the forefront, I think now more than ever. And so where I think the opportunities are for people who want to purchase their forever home and potentially get a little bit more house for like a little bit a better bang for your buck, right? Like maybe a little bit better house for the same amount of money, that kind of thing. And so where we're finding success with our clients right now, especially for the upsizers that I deal with, would be this type of model, which we call the repotting model within our company. And again, the company's called Monstera. So we try and kind of label everything around plant-based things because it's a good analogy for people to understand when real estate seems very confusing. But basically repotting them from their existing property into another home that has a secondary dwelling, because depending on the purchase price, oftentimes we can get them relatively close in terms of the same monthly payment if we have the basement suite rental income. And with the changes in the marketplace right now and the uncertainty around home ownership, I believe that rental prices will continue to increase because now we're seeing more demand on the rental side, right? And so if we see rental prices increase and you transition from a condo with maintenance fees and all of that kind of stuff, let's say an $800,000 condo to a $1.3 million house with rental income in the basement, it might not actually cost you anything more on a monthly basis if you live in one of the suites and rent out the basement. Okay. Now, where I think this is valuable long term is in the event that you have a family, like, because we're dealing with a lot of millennials. So maybe it's a couple that doesn't have any kids right now. And so they might only need 2 bedrooms or 3 bedrooms in the upper unit, and they don't actually need the space in the basement. But in the future, they will. And so instead of paying me, so like bad for me, good for them, instead of paying me again to like commissions, land transfer tax, all the transactional costs of moving, you pay them one time, get the bigger house now, and then just ask the tenants to leave and take over the space instead of trading up again to find a bigger space, right? So it's kind of holding that space, generating income, keeping your monthly expenses to a minimum, and then later down the line, you can ask them to leave, or you can keep them there if you have enough space upstairs, but you're mitigating the risk of having to move again in the future, and you're saving those future costs. So it's kind of like a one-time transition instead of several trades up.
That makes sense. Just a quick question on that, because I think that is a great idea. Is, you know, basically the people in the basement, the tenants, are helping to pay the larger mortgage. Now, would you say that it's important when looking for a home with a basement that you get something with a like a separate entrance, perhaps, or is that something that you can do after the fact? So what are you seeing out there? What's your
I think of course, if it has a separate entrance, that's more desirable. Ideally, everybody wants to have their own kind of separate living quarters.
Right.
To add a separate entrance after can be challenging. And it's also costly, right? And so oftentimes when people are utilizing this strategy, we try and get them something that's turnkey enough. Like maybe they have to do some cosmetic improvements, painting, light fixtures, flooring, you know, change the cabinets down the line.
Right.
But most of our clients, at least, are like, I'm already pretty tapped out because I need 20% to be able to do this, right? So it is a relatively cash heavy strategy to work with. So we try and say, like, instead of you spending 10, 15 grand, I want to say with material costs and labor, I don't even know what it would cost you at this exact moment to put in a separate entrance, but it used to be between 10 and 15 grand before the pandemic. I haven't done any since. Instead of you guys spending the 10 or 15 grand, does it make sense to invest that 10 or 15 grand into your down payment to get a better house that already has that, so that you don't have to take on the burden of actually conducting that yourself?
Is there any other advice that you would give millennials looking to enter the real estate market?
And we want convenience and we want everything now. And so the real estate market's obviously been on this bull run, you know, pretty much since the beginning of my career. That's been 7 years, right? And so I think a lot of people go into real estate expecting, hey, like, I'm going to sign a contract, and by the time I even get the keys to my house, I want to make a couple bucks, right? But really, my advice for millennials is understand that your real wealth is not built in 3 months.
Right.
And it's built over 20 years, making strategic moves and buying great properties, right? So buying properties that have really great features. So if that's going to be a condo, maybe it has a great view. If it's a 1-bedroom condo, maybe it means that it has parking, because it's really hard with new construction to buy a 1-bedroom with parking, because a lot of builders don't even offer that to you if you're buying a 1-bedroom, right? Yeah. So how do we try and find these positive rarities with each property to make sure that you have good demand in the future? With our clients, we have kind of three methods that we use. And so we have the planting method, which is what we do with first-time buyers, like planting those seeds, right? How do we plant some great seeds so that we're really going to grow this amazing future for you? And then once we've actually planted those seeds, we have 2 strategies from there to help you. One is the repotting method, so making sure that we get you a bigger pot so that you can continue to grow. And the third one is the propagation method, which is how do we take equity out of your current property, and how do we let you keep that property and propagate to a new like to a new plant essentially. And so that's really how you can grow wealth. It works for some people, it doesn't work for others, but it's like, how do we scale that portfolio to help you grow wealth in the future?
Right. Actually, I'm glad you touched on that because, I've talked to people in the past where they've started out with a condo, which is what all they were able to afford at the beginning. And that's an interesting point there because now, for example, they've met somebody, now they want to get a house. And you're right, in some circumstances, they need to sell the condo to have the money to be able to get a house. But if possible, in certain circumstances, if they're able to actually keep that condo as an investment, rent it out, and then get that home.
We try to explore both of those options with each of our clients before they sell. And so I think, as a viewer on here, you would say, Emma, you're a real estate agent. Don't you want to get listings? And the answer is, yeah, I would love to. But what's more important to me and my long-term growth, because I still believe that I'm relatively early in my career. I hope I have a lot of longevity in this industry. Yeah. And I've built a lot of my business off repeat and referrals. And so if I do right by my clients, which oftentimes, if we can do the propagation method with them, is the right thing for them because it's going to make sure that they're wealthier in their future.
Yes.
I would advise them to do that as step one, if it's a possibility.
Right.
Even though it means for us, we're sacrificing a potential immediate sale, but I know that it's building goodwill and it's doing right by our clients. And I'm much more likely to get referrals from those clients, and it'll come back, it'll pay dividends for doing the right things or doing right by our clients.
Absolutely. No, makes sense. And that's an excellent customer service, mentality that you have. Now for real estate, shifting a little bit to, we touched upon it, for real estate investors.
Yeah.
Where and what should they be looking at in the current time? So, as an investor, maybe I live with my parents. I don't know. Maybe I own a home that's built up quite a bit of equity now, and I'm looking at, building up my wealth. Should I be looking at, condos? If so, should I be looking at pre-con versus resale?
Yeah.
Townhouse, semis, detached. And should I be looking at, Toronto, or should I go all the way out to like London, Oshawa, that sort of thing? So
right.
It just seems like there's so many choices. Like, yeah.
So I think what it comes down to is like really understanding someone's needs and like, because people ask me all the time, like, where should I invest? Right. And I'm like, okay, well, what are you trying to accomplish is the real question. Because to me and to you, a successful investment might be a completely different outcome in comparison to like where we're at in our lives or what risk tolerance could be and all that kind of stuff. Right. So that will always be my first question before kind of like painting what I think is the best investment with like this really wide brush across the entire industry. So the first thing is like, hey, Rick, what would be a good return for you? And if you're expecting a 3% return from your financial advisor and you go, I could get, I'd be happy with 15. Okay, well, here are all the things that you could get for 15. And here's where I think we mitigate risk. If you're like, I need to get 100% return on my investment, well, the risk is inherently going to be higher. And maybe you have to look at flips. So then we look at different markets, right? Gotcha. Now, if I think about, again, I'm a huge proponent of buying quality real estate more than strategy itself. Because again, I believe this is a long-term play. And so in like even my recent research, one of the graphs that I had seen last week was single family housing starts. So we'll say like detached properties. So how many we're actually constructing now from the early 2000s to 2020. And it's like on a downward slope, right? Oh, wow. Because we're building more multifamily. It's more cost effective for builders. Material costs have gone up. There's just so many costs associated with it that completing single family detached housing is not nearly as profitable as it used to be. And so we're gearing away from that. And then so we look at single family housing starts going down and population growth going through the roof, basically, right? And so we go, okay, well, let's think about what are going to be the Michael Jordan rookie cards of real estate in 20 years from now. And to me, I think those things will be single family homes or like freehold dwellings close to city centers, right? Because we're just not making any more of them. You know, there's the classic like Mark Twain saying like, buy land, they're not making any more of it. If we narrow that down, it's like buy single family homes near the core of any city center, they're not making any more of it.
Okay, gotcha.
Right. And so that's why for my clients that are trading from the condo thing, it's like, hey, to go to that detached home in Leslieville as your first purchase, pretty damn tough because it's expensive. So we usually have to have like one intermediary step before we get there. And oftentimes that's the condo thing, right? Or some sort of starter home. But the reason why I'm so bullish on my clients doing the strategy of getting the condo and then trading up to something with a secondary dwelling is because you're reserving inventory, or you're reserving something for yourself that is going to be a rarity in the marketplace in the future. It's already a rarity and it's going to become increasingly more rare. And you're going to be one of the few people that have, you know, technically it's not a single family home, but because you have the secondary suite in the basement, but like you can turn that into your single family home if you want, or sell it as a single family home in the future. And they're just not building those. The builders are not incentivized to build those any further. We need to build multifamily housing to try to compete with the demand that we have for that and the population growth that we have. So there's no incentive for them to build one single family home anymore. Like, let's build condo buildings because we have a ton of people who are coming here that need housing.
Yeah. And what you're right. And what is it? It's like we have, 400,000 plus, I think, is a target for immigration.
432. I think they upped it by almost 10% now. So I think it's like 432 this year and then 450. I can't remember the exact numbers, but it's over 400,000 now.
Incredible.
Yeah. So we're not building 400,000 detached properties.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, thanks again. This has been fantastic. I really appreciate you coming on here, as I am sure that my viewers and listeners are as well. So for prospective buyers and or sellers, if they wanted to get a personal assessment of their situation and get your advice, what would you say the best way to contact you would be?
Yeah, so the easiest way to contact me directly is at connectwithemma.com. There's a link to my calendar there, and you can book a direct call with me. Or if you'd like to just learn a little bit more about me and my team, you can go to monstera.ca, and you can learn a little bit more about kind of our story, our history, and myself and my team members.
Excellent. And I'll put your contact information in the video description as well.
Awesome.
So thanks again. This has been fantastic. And have a great weekend. Thank you.
Yeah, you too. Thanks, Rick.